record to the cloud. You should see a little pop-up there just to click OK to the recording. And excellent. Okay, I'll hand over to you, Nolene and Emma.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Rob. Hi, everyone. My name is Nolene O'Keefe. I'm an academic developer in the Teaching Enhancement Unit in Dublin City University. And I'm delighted to participate in today's MoodleMunch session. And thank you to Rob for inviting myself and Emma along to speak about the Moodle peer work tool, which we in DCU call group review. So you'll hear the two terms today. So Emma, if you could, oh, great. So what was the challenge we encountered? In collaborative assignments, it can be difficult to assess students' individual contributions fairly, and a common complaint among students working on group assignments is when everyone receives the same grade, even though individual effort and contribution may vary significantly. It can lead to a situation where individuals benefit from a higher grade without contributing their fair share, or the sucker effect arises when group members believe that others are not pulling the same level of effort or that they're free riding. So in 2022, the Teaching Enhancement Unit added a new tool to Moodle called Peer Work, thanks to some National Forum funding we received. This tool helps to ensure fair grading. It has the potential to improve group dynamics and enhance reflection and accountability. So next slide, please, Emma. So the Peer Work plugin was developed by City St. George's University of London. You will find information about the plugin on moodle.org, which is the first link there, and the slides will be shared with you after. And you will also find background information along with really useful instructions on the City St. George website. And I'd like to say a very special thank you to Lisa Baker and the rest of the team for sharing this wonderful plugin and for their support and guidance. Thank you, Emma. So how does the tool work? So the teacher sets the group assignment, creates a group review activity, and defines the criteria for peer review. So simple scales, not rubrics, are used by students to rate one of the other's work and calculate a grade. So it can be configured so that individuals can rate themselves and the teacher can control visibility of peer marks and comments to group members. So it can be anonymous if you'd like it to be. So the teacher will also indicate the weight of the peer versus the teacher grade. And then the students will submit their group work. Then they will assess each other's contributions to the group work based on the criteria set by the teacher. The teacher enters a mark for the group element of the assignment, which is really important. Then the tool uses the WebPA scoring algorithm to calculate the scores and modify the teacher's mark to arrive at a differentiated mark for each student based on the peer feedback of their group. The teacher can also override the final grade for any individual if they see a particular reason that they might need to do that. So that's a really quick overview of the tool. And now I'd like to hand over to Emma, who's going to share her experience using the tool with her students.
Thanks a million, Nolene. So yes, I'm one of the early adopters of DCU's group review, the use of peer work. And I've been using it since 2023, the second semester, 2023. So I've been using it since then, and I'm going to bring you through today kind of two case studies that I have. So I'm going to give a very brief overview of the settings that I as a teacher play around with, and then show how I've used it for a large first year group and for a final year smaller class where it's a high priority module for them because it contributes to their final classification. And I have some feedback from the students about their experience of using it. So the kind of key things, Nolene mentioned them there briefly. One of the things is that you can accept the submissions through the group review tool, or you can grade them separately and then just input the value. So I tend to not have the submission as part of it, just to change, kind of not confuse the students on they do a submission and then say I finished it, but I haven't actually done the rankings yet. You can change the weighting, so you can apply the multiplier that's created from the group review to the entire grade, or you can have that it just applies against a portion of it. And in my two case studies, I will show you some examples of applying it on a small amount for minor differentiation of grades or a larger differentiation of grades. You can also put in a penalty for non-submission, and that is something that I have used because the peer review doesn't work very well if not every student contributes. So it's good to encourage all students will complete it, and so you can set that there's a penalty for non-submission. Then I have some feedback from students about visibility of groupmates' grades and their justification visibility that I thought was interesting. So I will just highlight that as I go through. then one of the really big jobs that the teacher needs to do when doing a group review is deciding on the criteria that will be evaluated and the scoring scale for them. So in my 2 case studies, I have 2 examples of using different scales. So my first year cohort, this is the one I've used for the last 3 years, I've used group review. So it's a large cohort of students. They're from science, but they're biology, chemistry, environmental, or even future teachers. So a bit of diversity in the grouping, and it's 180 to 200, or even as much as 240 students. The module's fully online, and it has what we call an interrupted timeline, so has different activities throughout the semester. And in that, there are 4 key activities: the skill sprints, where students make an e-portfolio; the topics of ethical consideration, students do a group debate; and the hackathon, that's a short challenge-based learning event. So we have these 3 high group engagement activities. Overall, 75% of the grades generated in this module are from group submissions. And so we have a group review for those submissions to allow tailoring, as Nolene said, giving individual grades to the contributors. So for this module, we set up 3 categories for assessment. One was how the students communicate. So are they in touch with their group? Do they attend meetings? Things like that. Then what do they contribute? Do they do the planning? Do they do the execution of activities? And what is the quality of the content? Because we know ourselves, different students have different expectations. And so someone may be contributing very well, but their peers may say, well, they gave us work, but we had to do a lot more with it then. So that's why we had these 2 sections. One is, did they contribute, and was it up to standard? And we used a 3-point scale. So then I put numbers beside them to relate back to how the peer work or the group review tool does the calculation. So on a 3-point scale of unsatisfactory, satisfactory, and outstanding, then students would get either a 0, 1, or a 2 as their number in the maths. So then we provide an expanded explanation for each point for the students to understand what it meant to say someone was unsatisfactory or satisfactory. So we asked students then, this is just a general instruction that students received: complete the group review to give feedback on how it worked. This will allow you to generate individual results. So we put it forward as the students had control on helping to generate individual results that reflect how much they did. And in this module, we had 3 or 4 students in the group, and we included the field for comments justification. This is really beneficial information. You can have it that it's per subcategory or per student, and I have just accepted it as per student. So the students are free to put in a comment: this person didn't engage, this person engaged so well, they led the task. They can decide the things they want to provide to us, the teachers. That's just where to find the results. You can look at the groupmates submission and grades, and then when you go in, you see a matrix like this. So this is the students, 4 students, A to D, and this is the values they received from their peers. You can see we're not accepting submissions where you can self-grade, so there's a dash on each of them. And this is where we gave a breakdown of what each of those things meant. The students don't see the numbers, they only see that description and the value. Are they unsatisfactory, satisfactory, or outstanding? So this is just that they would understand a little bit more about what they were saying. So in this group, you can see most felt that everybody was outstanding. 1 student thought that 2 of her peers were satisfactory, and just 1 was outstanding. And so this is the same group. The tutor grade was provided separately, 66. The group review weighting can apply to 100% of the module in this case. And we can see here that the contribution calculated is quite small. There's not a huge amount of fluctuation when we're applying it. So a multiplier of 1.03 for the best students, and a decrease then to a 0.94 for the weaker student. However, you can see over here, there is the possibility for a teacher to override the grade if desired. And so in a case like that one, sorry, let's flip back, it's only 1 student that marked down the others. There wasn't a consensus between them all. And so when it was applied to 100% of the grade, we felt it's better to overwrite it and keep it. But that was a problem with a small scale where there's only 3 criteria, a 0, 1, or 2, and the math is working on just 6 points for the whole activity. So from this, my learnings as a teacher was to use more granular scale. And then I got some student feedback that allowed me to know how the students experienced it and what they thought. So this was a large grouping of students, but we did only receive 27 responses to the survey. But in general, we found that students really liked having the option to review their team's performances. So blue and orange are the positive in these. So you can see here, or blue and red, they like to have control over the individual grade component. 2/3 of the class were in agreement. And they would like to see group review used in other modules, more than 50%. But the interesting part was students said a majority of them, more than 50%, felt that they would not like to see the justifications for the ratings they received. So we hadn't shown the justifications. I read all the justifications and said, this is some really nice formative feedback. It would be great to share this, but students said they wouldn't like to receive it, which I thought was very unusual. So in my final year module, it ran for the first time this year. It's a full CBL module. It's 7.5 credits. And so it's a high weighting module. And this perspective is why it's very important to the students to get individualization of grades, because they really feel under pressure in the final year to make sure that their work is being recognized. So this module is a final year. It's open to ECIU students, so it's delivered in a hybrid fashion. We had 25 students for the first iteration. And again, like the other one, we had multiple activities, and any of the group ones, we used the group review. So our hackathon, a group e-portfolio, and a group presentation. You can see here they're worth 65% of the module overall. So it is critical that we could give individual grades here. Learning from the other module, we added additional granularity to the scale. So for the hackathon, we talked about planning, documentation, ideas, presentation, and abstract. So it allowed that students could divide their tasks. Similarly, the presentation, I had the original criteria from the other one, engagement, contribution, and quality, but also then specifically preparing or delivering the presentation. And in the e-portfolio, we mapped it directly to the rubric. So each of the criteria were a part of the rubric. So if students divided the e-portfolio work based on the rubric, the review could reflect that. And we went to a 6-point scale. So we had no participation at all, are not assigned to task or options, and we had a did task alone. So then we had a scale that went from I did everything to I did nothing, I was absent. And we gave students guidance that it's fine to not be assigned, although it is a good idea when working as a group to work together as a group. So I have an example then of the maths for this. You can see now we're looking at a point where we have a very big spread of grades. We can go from 0 up to 4 here. So this person did not contribute. This person here was leading the task. And down here on the presentation itself, this student was working on the preparation of the presentation alone. These students were not assigned to the task. So because we had this larger scale against more points to evaluate, when we came to the final results, so for the grade of 60, this time only applied to 25% of the grade. We could find then that the calculated grades went up as far as 73 or 80% if it was on the 100%. So there's very big fluctuations. And then if it was on just the 25%, that's here the final weighted grade. You can see it added maybe 5% extra for the group review for C who had done the most. And again, I was able to use the override facility if needed. So when the student came back with extenuating circumstances, we could deal with that later. And here you can see the penalty applied. They hadn't completed the group review and the penalty kicked in and they had gotten a 0. So feedback from students in this module, we had some positive feedback. It's good, it's easy to use, and it holds people accountable. It's good depending on who you work with. We also had negative feedback. So my experience was bad. Some members didn't contribute and tensions arose when we realized we were using group review and I could provide feedback on their participation. So this one was really important. When I discovered the reviews could be shared with other group members, I felt unable to be honest. So this related back to the previous module where they said we wouldn't like the feedback to be shared. even though the feedback was shared anonymously for these groups of 4 or 5, the students found they just felt it was potential to be too identifying. So after this review, we didn't share the feedback anymore. It just came to the teachers again. So I would say, I have a summary here. So tips and tricks, the granular scale is very important to get the most out of this. Reviewing justifications early in a timely fashion, straight after submission of things, can really help identify and help people with group dynamics. Leaving them, if it's a group review only at the end, you wouldn't get that benefit. You can choose to apply the multiplier to the entire grade or part, and we found that was very beneficial to get more discerning between grades by having it applied to a larger portion of the mark, or reducing it to only a small portion of the mark if the scale was not very granular. And then using the penalty for non-submission as a little bit of a stick to get engagement. So in summary, I have found that group review, a bit of advice, it works best for groups of 4 or more. So there's less identifying or less feeling of one specific person targeted another. It's really good to observe the group dynamics and be able to intervene if needed in a timely fashion. And the really important takeaway for our final year students is that the individualization of grades can be achieved in a very high percentage of group activity things. So that's the end of my presentation, Rob. Hopefully I was on time.
We are good to go. So over to you, Dave.
Good afternoon. And as mentioned, I work freelance and I work with multiple different organizations. And today I'm going to be using one of the organizations that I support is called CABI, and they've given me permission to show what I've been doing with their Moodle. CABI, just very quickly, they do scientific research into agricultural practices, which they then share through books, journals, and through education via Moodle. So what we're going to look at is 2 particular filter plugins. One is called Filter Codes, which has been produced by, I don't know if it's pronounced Michael or Michelle Millet, and I've been using this for about 5 or 6 years, and I absolutely love it. If you've been to one of my other presentations, you've probably seen it. And then the second is one called Generico filter, which I've only relatively recently come across. And again, I've worked out, wow, this is brilliant. And what we're going to do today is use them in conjunction with each other. So the first thing you need to do, if you're interested in what I'm showing, is get whoever manages your Moodle to get these 2 plugins installed. And what's really important is once they are installed, they have to be in the correct order. And what I mean is, I've got to have the Generico plugin appearing above the Filter Codes plugin. If you have it the other way around, it won't do what I'm showing you, okay? Because it has to decide which order they get applied in. So what I'm showing is based on the assumption that Generico is higher than Filter Codes. So I'm just going to close a couple of tabs down to keep things tidy. So how does it work? So first of all, Filter Codes. I've got a course here, and at the top, I've got a text and media area, and it's got a little bit of personalization. It recognizes who I am. So it's sort of saying, hello, Dave Ford. And then there's a bit of information here. If I show you how that is built, and I'll just make that a little bit bigger. These things inside the curly brackets are all filter codes. So we've got course image, first name, last name, course name. They're all pulling that data dynamically, either from the user's profile, first name, last name, or from the course information. So the course image and the course name. Where it says course field study hours, that's a custom field that's applied to the course where we've specified how many hours it takes. And then we've got the outcomes, which again is a custom field that we've added to the course, and then we put it in here. So the beauty of this is this particular text and media area, I can put this at the top of any course in the Moodle, and it will display the correct information for that course. I don't have to go into each course and change things. I just need to do it once and copy that across. Now we're going to come back to this in a bit and do something cleverer with it. So that's one set of filter codes. My next set are these buttons across the top here. So I've got 4 buttons. Now, if I'm going to show you in Word what the HTML is, because it's just a bit easier for me to explain it here rather than showing it you in the browser. So my first button is the visible to anybody, and that's that button there, and it's linking to the assignments within the course. Now, what I've got there, that particular URL there, it doesn't matter which course I'm in, that is the same. It will take you to a list of all the assignments in the course. But what I've done is I've added a filter code in for course ID, basically the course number. So it will automatically replace that with that course number, and therefore that link will work. So if I put this particular text and media area into any of my courses, it automatically points to the correct assignment without me having to change it. The things that are highlighted in yellow is an opening and a closing tag. And if min assistant basically means if you have a role of non-editing teacher or above, you can see what is in between the tags. So you can see that lot. So in other words, students will see that button, but not the other three. And then the non-editing teachers will see this bit. What I've then done is I've added an extra level. If min teacher, that's an editing teacher role or above, they get to see that button. So if I just go back to here, editing teacher sees all four, students see one, and non-editing teachers will see 1, 2, or 3, but not the fourth one. And if I just quickly flick to here, I'm logged in as a student. I'm only seeing the single button. And some of the sites that I work with, I have quite complicated sets up of buttons where different people see different buttons based on all sorts of various things. And I'm just using filter codes as a way of showing the right button to the right person. I'm a big fan of, I want people to see what they need to see and not see what they don't need to see. So I try and use that for that purpose. Another example is if I'm doing, I don't use it with Cabby, but with a lot of my other organizations, we have things called the scheduler where you can sort of book appointments with your tutor. But the problem with that is if you're in a different time zone to what you think you're in, all the times are wrong. So what I tend to do is any of the activities that are like that, I put in at the top here, this is what your time zone is. And based on that time zone, here's the current time. Okay, that's the correct time. I'm in the right time zone. If I come in as a student, oh, hang on, 2:37, it's 1:37, I'm wrong. Okay, oh, it's because I've been set as being in Europe rather than being in the UK. I can then come in and I can edit it. So it saves a lot of problems where people sign up for sessions, but they've accidentally turned up at the wrong time just because they're in the wrong time zone to where they're at. And again, all of that is created with filter codes. So let me just expand that. Oops, sorry, let me just expand that. So full name, preferred language, time zone, and then now, and then it's just what format you want. All of that is filter code driven. And then this thing here, which is basically sort of associated courses, dead simple. Course cards 65, it basically creates links to any visible courses within category number 65. It just automatically creates the course cards. If I add a new course into that category, it just automatically adds that into here. I don't have to go into each course and manually add the course link in. It's just done it for me. So that's really clever. And then finally, as a filter code example, the QR code that I've got here, this is a QR code for this page. It's a text and media block. There's two filter codes. The middle one is this URL. So that basically creates the QR code for this particular page. And then it's inside filter codes that will basically convert that into a QR code. So if I've got tutors who are working out in the field with students and they want the students to find a particular page in Moodle, they go to that page, they bring up the QR code, hold their phone up, students have their phones, they scan the QR code and they're straight there without having to sort of follow 3,000 clicks to get there. So that's filter codes. Let me go on to Generico filters. So here we have quite a lot of forums that we use throughout the site. And all of our forums, we have this standard set of 3 lines of text in each of the forums. Now, the problem is if I want to edit these for any reason, I've got to come into every single forum and make the edit. I might be able to do a find and replace if I'm lucky, but that's not always the case. That can become a bit tedious. So this is where Generico is really clever. So I'm just going to very quickly show you how to create a Generico filter and how we would use it. I'm going to just come into the HTML code and I'm going to copy that particular code that creates those 3 lines of text. Within the Generico filters, you have a whole list of Generico filters and you pick one of the empty ones. I'm just going to go for number 10, just to keep it out of the way of my other ones. Now there's lots of boxes in here, but you only need to worry about 2 of them. The first one is the key. And this is basically the name that is going to make some sense. And I'm going to call mine forum_instructions. And then in the body, I'm going to paste that particular code. So I've now just created a Generico filter called forum instructions. I'm going to go back into my forum item, and I'm just going to get rid of the text that's already there, get rid of the HR, and it's curly bracket, Generico, colon, type equals, and then you enter the key that you gave a second ago. And hopefully, if I've got all of that right and I haven't typed it incorrectly, when I save and display, lo and behold, it's appeared. And the beauty of this is if I've got hundreds of these across the site, which I might do, and I want to change those instructions, I only have to change them in one place. I just come into my template here, I make a change, and that change is going to apply everywhere that I've applied the filter. So that's a static Generico filter, which is quite good. I can also have dynamic ones. Now I'm going to use YouTube as an example. Here I've embedded a YouTube video via the HTML code, and I've set it so that it actually has a start and an end time. So it's only going to play a clip of it. And this is what I've been doing for years. And basically what I do with people is I share that code as a kind of a template, and then I ask them to just change 3 things. Update that with the code of the video, add in your start time in seconds there, and add in your end time of seconds there. I think that's relatively simple, but a lot of people find that quite tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a Generico filter to do a similar job. Now, I've partly cheated because I've already half done this just to save time and make it easier. So let me just go back to my filters and YouTube. So I've already partly created it. And what I've done is I've just copied the HTML code from that particular item. So you can see it's there. I've just put it onto different lines just to make it a little bit easier. Now, the clever thing here is I can add variables in, and the variables are identified by a double @ sign. So I'm going to do @ and then code @. So I've basically replaced code with a variable. I'm going to replace my start time with another variable, @ start, @ and then my end time with a third variable. Okay, so I've just edited my Generico filter. So it's now going to be dynamic. It's looking for 3 variables, which it's going to slot in to there when we apply it. So let's have a go. I'm going to come back to my course, and I am going to edit this item. And you'll notice here, I don't need to go into the HTML editor. Some people get confused with the HTML editor. I'm doing all of this in the WYSIWYG. So again, Generico, type, oh, sorry, colon, not @ type equals, what's it called? Well, it was called YouTube start end. And then what you do is you put in your variables. So the first variable was called code. So I do code equals, and then I need to put in what the code is. The second variable is called start, and the third variable calls end. I'm just going to copy and paste just so it saves me mistyping the YouTube code. So just give me a second while I do that. So basically that there. And hopefully, as if by magic, when I save and return, there's the first one, which was done by HTML. This is the second one with a Generico filter. And you can see it starting at 25 seconds, okay? And it would stop at 40 if I'd followed it through. So that's a dynamic Generico filter. So now we're going to combine filter codes and Generico filters. So this thing at the top here, which I created earlier, if I want to, I can turn this into a Generico filter. So I just go edit settings, view source code. Oops. Copy that. I'd go into the template. I would create that as a template filter. And it means that all I need to do at the top of each course is, rather than having this HTML at the top of each course, I just have a single line of text, which is Generico filter equals course summary. And that would then apply to all courses. The beauty of that is, if I want to change the structure of it, I can change it in one place rather than in 3,000 places. And also, you might have different courses want to have a different type of heading. So a long course might want one sort of heading, a short course might want a different source. We just have a different Generico filter. And as long as the tutor can apply the correct filter for their type of course, then bingo, they're in business. And then finally, just to really blow people's minds, quite complicated, but this is quite cool. I'm now logged in as a learner. I'm going to a course. I'm not currently enrolled on this course. This information here is visible before the student has joined the course. And I've created 4 tabs: overview, course structure, skills that you'll learn, and related courses. And the way that I've done this is by having a single Generico filter, which is the whole area, which then has a combination of filter codes embedded into it in order to create this particular effect. And the way that it's managed from a kind of a teacher's perspective is all they have to do is within the course, Generico summary, that basically this is the name of the Generico filter that we're using, because not all of them will use this style. And this is the one that we're using for that one. And then we just got all these different boxes. How many study hours? How much does it cost? Which languages are they? What are the learning outcomes? And then all of these will automatically appear into that information box. And that's through a combination of filter codes and Generico filters. And at that point, I will pause and take questions.